We're showing you how to buy your way to a bigger business without getting ripped off or lost in the paperwork.
Welcome to Commercial Photographer, your guide to marketing, creativity, and growth. This is a podcast that helps commercial, brand, and headshot photographers navigate the competitive world of commercial photography with actionable strategies to grow your business.
Well, hello there, Sam. How are you?
Excellent, Marcus. Very, very good. And what about you?
Yeah, very good too. Very good too. And today's show, you're going to be carrying on, I believe, from a previous one.
Yeah, that's right. So last week we were talking about buying a business and we were so busy with that, Marcus, that we ran out of time to finish. So we're going to dive straight back in and do part 2 of buying a photography business. So, in the second part of buying a photography business, we're going to dive into the final stages. And by the end of this show, you're going to walk away knowing 3 crucial things. First, we're talking about the contract, how to get a rock-solid agreement in place that everyone sticks to without having to pay a fortune for a lawyer. Secondly, we'll reveal a brilliant way to structure the payment with staggered money and commission that takes the risk out of the deal for you. And finally, we'll cover the most important bit, the essential first steps you must take to make money from the client list you've bought. You've spent the cash, now let's make sure you get the value.
Okay, let's go for it. Sounds good.
Cool. So the first thing I just want to do is do a very quick refresh from the last show, just a quick reminder of what we talked about. So we talked about finding a business to start with, making sure you get something that's right for you. We talked about initially building trust both ways with that person you're going to buy the business from, so you can both trust what each other is saying and go forwards. We then said getting an NDA is the next thing, so you can then start to get accounts and all those sorts of things. So get an NDA, they're dead easy. You can find them online. That it does not need to be as complicated as it sounds. It just means you promise not to share all the data that they give you. And then get the data, the accounts, the number of customers, the number of leads, etc. And then think about what's included and discuss what's included, whether that's client lists, recurring clients, kit, name, website, whatever else Google Maps listing, whatever else it may be. Think very carefully about what is included. And then you need to talk about the price. And we said that's complicated. There's no standard way, but one way I said think about is think how much money you might make in a year. And that could be a good way. But again, we talked about you can use commission, so you could pay less but give them quite a hefty commission on sales that come in. You could work on staggered payments as well once certain things have happened. So there's how much you're going to pay, and think about, like we said, staggered payment, referral fees, all of those sorts of things involved, and obviously how much the business is worth to you. And that's kind of where we've got to, Marcus.
Indeed. I mean, you know, it's quite a process, I suppose. Of course, it's bound to be, isn't it? Really, it's you don't want it to go wrong. That's for sure.
No, that's it. It is a process. But yeah, it doesn't have to take too long. And again, it kind of depends on the value. If you're talking about something small value, you need to try and make it as little of a process as possible. But if you're talking about, quite a big business with a lot of customers, you'd spend more time on it. It's a bit dependent on that. And I think once you got to that stage and you've discussed with the other, because we were talking last time about discussing with the other person the price, what you're willing to pay, what they're willing to accept, the idea of staggered payments, the idea of commission, and coming up with something. Certainly the last one I bought, they were wanting more than me than I was willing to pay. I didn't think it was worth as much as he did. So we came up with an agreement on commission. So I then said, okay, I can give you this much, but for every sale that comes in, from these customers, and I say, I'll give you I think we fit 20%. You can fit a pretty hefty commission in there if you're going, well, okay, I'm not paying them as much, but the leads are coming from them because you're taking risk out by doing that, aren't you? And in some ways pushing onto them the idea that they might help a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's not just really, we're not just talking about a bricks and mortar thing here, buying something on High Street or whatever. No, and I think you made that very clear in the last show, that it's a list you're buying, isn't it? A client list. And I think that's a great idea, Sam, to pay commission to keep that client list going, really.
That's it. Yeah. And you might pay just cash up, as you say. You could just pay cash up front for that client list and leave it at that. Or you could pay much less or almost nothing, but have a commission. Obviously, you'd need the trust for that because they've got to trust that you're going to do that. And, you'd presume you would. I certainly have stuck with that on mine. So then once you've decided all of that and you two have verbally agreed something between the person you're buying the business from and yourself, and you're all happy, obviously the next thing is to draw yourself up a contract. You want this all written down. Okay. Now, again, people think this must be 43,000 pages because they've seen the agreement you have to tick for Facebook, and it doesn't. It doesn't need to be complicated. You just need it in plain, clear English, and basically you just need to write down what you agreed. I think for me, the key is it's got to be as clear as possible but also have all the options in. So I don't know if you've got staggered payments and you say, okay, I pay you the next £1,000 after 2 months if you've done X, Y, Z. That's great. But you'd also need to include what happens if they haven't done X, Y, Z. Do you pay them the same if it's a month late, or do you not pay them at all? So you just need to make sure if there are kind of options in there, all of the options are covered, because you don't want to get to a point where you're going through this and at some point they think you owe a lot of money, you think you don't.
Oh,
it's kind of grey. So you want to make sure it's very, very clear. So I think it doesn't need to be legally complicated. It just needs more clarity. This happens once I've got this information, you pay that, or I pay you this, then you send me that information, then I pay you this next installment. And within, and it can be the contract starts on this date, you must pay within a week. Okay, within 10 days of you receiving payment, you must send me 1, the client list, 2, access to the website, 3, blah, 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 blah. Just really clear on everything when stuff needs to happen. And obviously give a window, like we said. People need a few days to make payments. People need a few days, I don't know, to gather the photography kit and hand it over, but make it really clear what is happening when, step by step by step, in very clear English. I think that's the
presumably
most important thing.
But presumably, you'd recommend getting a lawyer involved in that, and not just getting something
there's
from.
Absolutely no need for a lawyer, because then it will be incredibly complicated. There'll be massive legal thing, because it's basically agreement between two people. Frankly, the chances of you
so handshake,
slim.
thing.
I think you want to make it very, very, very clear. You probably want to put in something, again, restating that you're not buying the business, you're buying the assets, just to make that super, super clear in writing. You definitely want both of you to sign it. And then what I also recommend is put it through ChatGPT. ChatGPT is great. It understands British law. You say, don't get it to write it at all. You need to write, but you can say, I'm buying this business. It's under UK law. We're doing it on this basis. What do you recommend about this contract? To be honest, I found that bloody brilliant. It'll go, oh, you didn't mention that after the 14-day cool-off period, what happens next? Or it'll go, oh, have you thought? And it really does look through. And, like I said, you've got to be really clear at what happens each step. It will spot if you've missed a step. It will spot if you've missed an option.
Yeah.
It will spot if under British law you haven't said something. It's actually... I'm amazed how much it knows in terms of the law. It's absolutely stunning.
Fun enough, a couple of years ago, I was speaking to somebody about ChatGPT before it really got well known, and they were a lawyer, and they said to me that they felt they was going to really impact their industry in a big way.
I mean,
you can see why.
Yeah, I mean, I have terms and conditions for my business, and I built them well before we had ChatGPT. But now if I ever change them, because sometimes just for a client I need them tweaked a bit, I always put it back through ChatGPT, and it always, goes, yeah, that's perfect. Oh yeah, you've mentioned that, brilliant. Perhaps, have you thought about that? And it does come up with some really good thoughts, and especially without this thing where you've got to, if it's a one-off payment, it's going to be a super simple contract. But if, like you say, you've got staged payments, it will go, oh, have you spotted if they don't do at stage 3, if they don't deliver the camera equipment by the 14th of March, have you considered what happens? Because that isn't included in this, so they'll spot if you've missed things, which is really good. So, no, I don't think it needs lawyers at all. It just needs to be a very, very clear how much is paid, when, what somebody else is giving in return, and a timeline, pretty much.
Well, that's good to know.
Keep it super, super simple. As soon as you get a lawyer involved, it will get mega complicated. They'll ask hundreds of questions and you'll lose lots of money. We're talking here buying and selling. We're not saying bad business, stuff from small businesses. As soon as, if you've got a much bigger business, you need lawyers. But for this sort of thing, as soon as you put a lawyer in, you're just sucking out the value so fast. So that's it. So you get yourself a contract, print it off, give them time to read it, and then both physically sign it. Ideally, you're probably going to be in a similar place. Go and meet, sign together, shake hands, have a beer, whatever. Excellent. Next stage done. So then after that, the key is implementing it as you've written it in the contract. So whatever you've written, bloody stick to it. Yeah. So, if you've written a really clear plan, you want to stick to it, because if you deviate from the plan, then they can deviate from the plan. The whole thing starts to unravel, even if you do it accidentally. If you've got this really clear, after, on the 5th of April, I will pay you this amount, then bloody pay them on the 5th of April or before. Do not dilly-dally around and forget, and, I was busy that day, I had a photo shoot. Do what you bloody agreed. Yeah, so whatever you've put in the contract, really carefully stick to it and make sure the other side stick to it and go through and ensure, you're paying according to the contract and ensure they're delivering according to the contract.
So, Sam, maybe you're going to go on to this, but have you had much experience in photographers? What kind of how this might happen? Have you heard much? I mean, I know.
It's just quiet, there's photography businesses. Say tomorrow, Marcus, you got offered.
Yeah.
I don't know. You decided you were going to be a cruise line photographer. So tomorrow, you hop on a cruise line. You're going to spend the next 3 years on a cruise boat, taking pictures on there, getting paid lots of money, and enjoying the Caribbean. You think, that sounds marvelous. I'm going to do that. Marcus Ahmed Photography is still in Bristol. You could sell that to another Bristol photographer. They could buy your client list. They could take over your recurring clients. Something like that.
Yeah. I mean,
opportunities for that sort of thing.
I can see that in event photography, sports photography. I know a friend of mine had a business doing dance. Those American cheerleaders, photography for that kind of thing, and it was very lucrative, as you said. I think they sold their business one eventually, so it does happen.
I mean, it could be any type. So the key is, what are you going to do with the stuff you've got? Obviously, if you've got kit, that's pretty obvious. Take some pictures, learn to use it. But you've got that client list, you've got the lead list, maybe you've got a website, maybe you've got email marketing list, whatever it is. You've got to make sure you're getting value from that, because you've just paid money for it. So make sure you are then doing something with it. So if you've got the client list, right, I'm going to, over the next month, call every single one of them or email them and arrange a call, because I want to speak to every single one of them and make sure they know who I am. They know what I'm offering. We kind of have met each other, and then I'm going to think about what happens next. All the leads, right, well, what am I going to do? Maybe put them an email marketing list and then send them like a series of 10 emails over time. Maybe I'm going to call all of them if it's a smaller list and the high value people, or I'm going to filter and just call some of them. But you've bought this stuff. If you just let it then sit in a cupboard and go, oh, I've got a client list, but I don't really know what to do with that, I've never spoken to them, you're just wasting your money. Yeah. Be proactive. Do something with the list you've got. You've bought something that's got value. You've got to make list use it, and you've got to do it fast. Over time, the longer you leave it, the more kind of they've forgot who the original photographer is. They don't know who you are. They're not sure why you're calling. Jump on it right away. You spent the money, put the effort in.
Well, I guess that's another good reason why it's worth keeping the person you bought the business on board in some way.
Yeah, so I mean, what I did, one of the things I think I said before, one of the clauses I put in was that my second stage payment was, you get paid this when I've spoken to 95% of the clients. So that my feeling was then that I was obviously going to put in effort, because I wanted to speak to all these clients, but some people are always hard to get hold of. So it's going to be then, well, if there's enough that are hard to get hold of, this guy who I'm buying it from has to put the effort in to help me get in touch with them, because he knows them. He knows if they prefer WhatsApp or if it's best to email them or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So he's got that personal touch,
because they don't get their payment otherwise.
Yeah. And I guess that also means that if you suddenly phone those people up and they say, oh, that was an awful business, I don't want to deal with you again, you can think, oh my God, okay, I've got a get out clause here.
You'd have had to put that into the contract. You'd have had to, which would be pretty hard to do. I think you'd need to have sorted that before you started the phone calls. Because if you've got that contract and you say you're paying them, you can't go back on that, because people say they don't want to work. They didn't like what they found. You've agreed. So you kind of need to work that stuff out first. Because it'd be hard to put a clause in if, when I call people, they don't like. How would you word that? Almost, it'd be really
it's a tricky one. No.
Sure, so I think that's that's part of your work first. Is you kind of try and make sure that isn't going to happen. Maybe you have to speak to one or two clients before you before you buy.
I mean, you are buying into goodwill here, aren't you? Really?
Yes, effectively, which is why. Yeah, which is why right at the beginning it's talked about trust. You've got to build that trust.
Yes.
You've got to make sure they trust you, and you've got to make sure you trust them, because you're right, it's 90% about trust. So there we go. That is the end, Marcus. Once you've bought it, get on, put some effort in, talk to all those people. You've just doubled your client base, so you better go and talk to them and get them in for some shoots, because then you're making use of all that money you've spent. And obviously you've bought the kit, work out how the hell it works and use it.
Well, Sam, that was absolutely spot on. To quickly recap for our listeners, we've covered 3 vital things today to help you successfully complete your business purchase. First up, we showed you exactly how to write a simple but clear contract yourselves, meaning you avoid those hefty legal fees and can be absolutely clear on the timeline and payments. Second, we talked about using the brilliant tactic of staggered payments and commission to structure the deal, which helps incentivize the seller and make sure you only pay as you get value. And finally, you now know the non-negotiable immediate action plan you must take to start phoning those new leads and clients, turning your new asset into profit fast. Now go and get to work.
And don't forget that you can get for free the Commercial Photographer Guide to Creativity and Marketing. After all, that's what this show is all about. To get your free download, all you need to do is go to our website at commercial-photographer-podcast.com/creativity. Let me do that one again. commercial-photographer-podcast.com/creativity. And from there, you can get your free guide from us to marketing and creativity.
Yeah, and you say, it's a really, as we said in the previous show about this, it's a really good way of upscaling your business straight away, really. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, that's it. If you're starting out, really good way to start out if you've got some cash to spend. Or if you're just at a stage you'd say, I want to grow the business, I want to do it quickly. It's a great way to do it.
Yeah, and we're in tough times. You never know, there might be some good businesses out there that are going for a song that people just got bored or just got fed up of running.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think people will always want their value from their business.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, good. Right. Well, I will see you next week, Marcus.
See you next week, Sam.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you want to make sure you never miss a show, head to the website commercial-photographer-podcast.com and sign up to the newsletter. We'll be back next week with more practical advice to help you grow your business. See you next time.